So this is my DJI Action 6. It has a 1/1.1 inch sensor and a variable aperture lens with f2 to f4. The reason it has a variable aperture is because when you have a larger sensor, you tend to have issues with close focusing. And so with the variable aperture on this thing, it allows you to, get your typical action shots, but also, vlog with it if you want to shoot something closer to you. And I find that it works fine leaving it in the variable aperture mode. And the reason I bring that up is that the GoPro Mission 1 Pro, which is that middle one of the three that are coming out in May, I believe. Not the interchangeable lens one and not the base model. The Mission 1 Pro. Am I overexposed? Hang on, that's a little better. So through my Google searching, I found that the GoPro Mission 1 Pro, that's a lot to say, has a lens aperture, a fixed aperture of f2.8. So when you're looking at depth of field equivalence compared to full frame, so you got to multiply the 1 inch by 2.7. So a f2.8 aperture is more like an f8, which means pretty much everything will be in focus. The thing about having a larger sensor and the fixed aperture is that when you do this, like you point the camera at yourself, you might have like a longer, like a farther close focusing distance, which unless you have long arms, it might be tricky to get yourself in focus. And I'm not sure if they're coming out with like a close focusing lens that you could attach to it, or maybe Google's wrong and maybe the aperture will be a variable aperture. Or maybe I'm looking at aperture wrong. Maybe it's not the variable aperture on the Action 6 that allows you to close focus. I don't know. I'm not an expert on these things. I just use the products and try to get the best footage I can. But I just thought it was an interesting thought that in the past, the reason that you always heard about why action cameras don't have large sensors and wide apertures is because of the close focusing, or the fact that if you have a large sensor action camera, you're going to have an autofocus system. So that's another thing, is that I haven't seen any information on whether or not the GoPro Mission 1 Pro is going to have an autofocusing system similar to like my A6700 here, where like it's focusing on me when I'm like 3.5 feet away from the camera. And then when I put something up close like this, it actually has a focusing mechanism that changes so that you can focus on something that's like 1 foot in front of the camera. And then it comes back to me when I reappear, right? So that's just a thought. We'll have to wait and see. I am definitely not a big enough creator to get a Mission 1 Pro in my hands to test. So we're gonna have to wait to see all the big time creators do their videos on the Mission 1 Pro. Like I said, it releases in May, which is just around the corner, which I would assume that a lot of those people out there, you know who they are, they probably already have the camera in their hands and they're currently testing it, and we'll see. Someone left a comment on my last video talking about this, where talking about the reliability of GoPro cameras in general. And that was a concern, like, because the last time I owned the GoPro, I did have some corrupted files. The battery life was pretty terrible, and I just didn't like the look of the footage. It always looked a little bit too crispy, a little bit too digital for my taste. Like, whereas the DJI products, I just like the image better, and I can match it to Pocket 3, Action 6. You can kind of match them all together. They even match pretty well with my shooting an S-Log3 on the Sony, which is nice. So a lot of this is just me just thinking out loud. I mean, we're always looking for the next best thing, even though we don't need it. Like, this camera's great, Pocket 3 is great, A6700 is like pretty much all the camera you could ever need. And I think that's why a lot of creators, myself included, we kind of have this dilemma lately of wanting to talk about the latest and greatest and whether or not you should upgrade from whatever you currently have, as opposed to just posting the art, posting the videos, posting the photos. And I think we get so caught up in the engagement and the clicks and the subscribers that we forget that the reason we have these tools is to make art. And I think we should be okay with just posting the art that we create with the tools, even though fewer people might watch, than just always focusing on the tools themselves. I could have just said that in one sentence and this would have been a really short video, but I was rambling on, and I apologize. So it's not for me to decide like how excited you should be about the next camera that might be coming out and whether or not you should upgrade. But going forward, I think I'm going to try to focus more on the art itself and less on the tools to make the art. And bottom line, that's what this whole deal is all about, right? So that's all I got for this one. Feel free to like and subscribe if you feel so inclined. And as always, thanks for watching. By the way, I picked up another cheap lens. I didn't mention it, but I'm shooting on an SG Image 25mm f1.8. I know I made a video a couple weeks ago about the 7 Artisans 25mm 1.8, which is essentially the same lens, but I actually returned it and picked up this lens because it's quite a bit smaller. Same price, about $125, $130. And the other thing is that the autofocus is virtually silent. I can't hear anything. I mean, granted, I have a microphone down here that's kind of far away from the camera itself, but the autofocus is a lot quieter on the SG Image 25mm 1.8, which I appreciate as a video creator. And like I said, it's smaller, same price. So if you are thinking about the 7 Artisans 25mm f1.8 or the SG Image 25mm 1.8, I'd go with the SG Image all around. It's a great lens. Autofocus seems to work perfectly fine. And it's, for me, I'm always going to go for the smaller, more compact, lighter lens just for my use case with travel and wanting to take my camera out more often. So that's a little mini review to end this video. Hope that helps. Thanks.